Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Baylor Scott & White Sports Performance Center, athletes made here. The Sports Performance Center was developed with one goal in mind: to maximize human performance through movement and recovery. Their team of expert performance sports coaches and trainers will guide you to achieve your performance goals. That's the Baylor Scott & White Sports Performance Center, located at the Star in Frisco. This episode is also brought to you by Allen Dental Studio. Located off Bethany Drive in Allen, their office was designed with you, the patient, in mind, which means an excellent and enjoyable experience. From cosmetics to implants, you deserve a perfect smile, and Allen Dental Studio can make that happen. Also, don't want to leave out another longtime friend of the podcast, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. With locations in Carrollton and Dallas, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes offers an affordable, high-quality alternative to senior living. Call now at 469-400-7650. That's Texan, spelled T-E-X-S-E-N, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Kendrick Johnson, Devin Hasson, Taylor Raglin, and Bryan Murphy. That's right, the whole gang is here for the first time since, I guess, the infant days of the podcast, back when we used to gather in our conference room back there and just shoot the bull for for basically an hour or so. But nevertheless, yes, we're gonna get the entire group at the round table, and we'll see how we can make this work. Hopefully, it doesn't look too congested on the screen. So I did call everyone here though, because today's subject is one that concerns everybody, and this is we're going to revisit our preseason predictions from over the summer. So if you listen to any of our district preview podcasts from over the summer, when we went district by district, we always ended each podcast by laying out our preliminary 4 teams that we thought were going to make the playoffs from each district. Of course, mentioning that we reserve the right to change once we actually get to see these teams in action and get something of a sample size to work with. Well, we're 3 weeks into the season, and for a lot of our districts, at least at the 6A level, the non-district portion of the schedule is concluded. So the real games begin fairly soon. So in keeping with that, let's do this, guys. Let's revisit our preseason predictions and see if how much has changed in 3 weeks' time. Are there any teams that we maybe expected a bit too much from that have been a little bit slower out of the gates? Any teams that maybe we're a little down on in the offseason that have really just come out of nowhere to begin the year? So let's go. Yeah, we're going to talk of our 4 6A districts for this episode, and then next week on Monday we will do 5A. So let's just get the big one out of the way. All right, let's do 9-6A, one that pertains to the 4 of the 5 of us here. So Devin, you can catch your breath for a bit. So Taylor, Bryan, Kendrick, myself. So I did go through, guys. I went through and listened back to the episodes, and I did write down everybody's preseason predictions. So I will read them off, and then we can just kind of discuss what we've seen so far and what we would change, if anything, within these predictions. So I'll start with me. I had Allen, Prosper, Boyd, and Plano. If you remember, I was a bit higher on McKinney Boyd than most heading into the season with the hiring of Joe McBride and then some of the impact transfers that they had coming into the year. Boyd, a team that has missed the playoffs for a few years now, thought they were a real big bounce back candidate. Obviously, still plenty of time for that to happen, but nevertheless, that's where I was at heading into the season. Taylor, you had Allen, Prosper, McKinney, and Plano as your top 4. Bryan, you had Allen, Prosper, Plano, and McKinney Boyd as your top 4, and Kendrick, you had Allen, McKinney, Prosper, and Plano as your top 4. So, when you guys think about that now, how do we feel about that stuff now at this juncture of the season?
Terrible.
Whoever wins out of Boyd and McKinney is going to the playoffs. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the swing game. Whoever wins that game is going to get a spot. I feel comfortable about the top 3. I feel comfortable about Allen, Prosper, and McKinney, but that 4th spot's going to be a swing spot.
I think this is really indicative of, I know we couched all these predictions with, let's also see how the non-district goes, but this year in particular, I'm a complete 180 on a lot of teams. Plano, I was really high on. I thought that Tylen Hines and Cody Christ, combined with some consistency at quarterback, was going to be kind of a big deal, and they've picked it up a little bit. Certainly,
Rowlett, they're 2-1 after all.
Yeah, they are 2-1. Rowlett, not the biggest test, but the offense did show up. Mm-hmm. But outside of Allen and Prosper, who's really, I think, shown the most, even though most of us had him as the second best team, I think Prosper's really kind of reaffirmed that,
especially after last week,
that it's not going anywhere, especially after that win over Flower Mound. Then outside of that, I have Jesuit as my third best team in 9-6A right now. I think Jesuit's shown really well. They've beaten the teams they were supposed to beat, I feel like, as far as Wiley, but they've also had a really tough schedule. Arlington, no slouch, and then DeSoto. That game was competitive, for a long time, and I think without E.J. Smith.
Yes, E.J. Smith missed 2 of their first 3 games. He made a season debut last week against Wiley. Wasn't even used that much. He only touched the ball 10 times, but they still won that game going away.
I think as soon as he's really healthy and kind of in the swing of things, which should be the case now the district's starting, I think Jesuit is. It's weird because they get off our radar sometimes because we don't officially cover them, even though they're in the district. I think this is one that we definitely missed coming into the year, and I'm not going to miss it again. I
think partly though was because we were so high on them last year because of the E.J. Smith factor and just their consistency over the years. And then they finished second to last year and was weren't able to kind of match the hype because they were kind of the consensus pick among media outlets as being the second best team in that district. I'm in the same page as far as Allen and Prosper go. With Allen, they're 3-0. They've had, I guess as far as just sheer resume goes, the toughest of the toughest schedule of the 8 teams in the district with Cedar Hill, Dickinson, and then last week against Coppell. There are 2 things though, just to talk about Allen for a little bit. There's 2 things that have kind of stuck out on the kind of the negative side with Allen, as nice as this 3-0 start has been, as far as just issues to kind of monitor with them going forward, and that is turnover margin and then big plays allowed in the passing game. Now, turnover margin, with Allen, it's typically a program that you associate with being very, very efficient and taking care of the football, things that obviously that staff prides their program on. Allen is a -5 for the season in turnover margin through 3 games.
That'll get you beat sooner or later.
They committed 3 turnovers against Cedar Hill, committed 2 against Dickinson. They committed 4 last week against Coppell. Now, the caveat to that Coppell game was quarterback Raglin Sharp didn't play. He was held out as a precautionary reason for an ankle injury and whatnot, and they just had a really, really tough time protecting the football, and it almost cost them the game. They needed a late touchdown from Selden Manning to escape a narrow margin. 28-21 was the final against a Coppell team that has been a little bit up and down to begin the year. But yes, Allen has had a really tough time protecting the football, even at full strength, to begin the season. And also, they have been consistently hurt by big plays through the air. I went back and checked their first 3 games. The leading receiver on the opposing team, and here are their stat lines. Cedar Hill, Cameron Hutchings, 4 catches, 114 yards. Dickinson, Darrell Harris, 5 catches, 112 yards. Coppell, Anthony Black, 3 catches, 108 yards. So they are just something to monitor kind of going forward, is that Allen is consistently getting beat deep by the opposing team's number 1 wide receiver, which, I mean, when you look at the wideouts available in 9-6A, you think of Kareem Coleman with McKinney Boyd, a guy who's known for making plenty of big plays deep. I guess a player like Tyler Bailey now with Prosper the weapon that he's become.
And a new name, Isaiah Rojas from McKinney. He's got 417 yards and 6 tubs in 3 games.
So something that Allen's going to have to clean up at the very least, when you think of playoffs and, with what Rockwall has cooking and the fact that maybe the best overall player in the state in Jackson Smith and Jigba, and just the nightmares that he can cause for a defense, and just something to monitor on the Allen side of things, because 3-0 start's impressive. Certainly the way that they were able to take care of business against Cedar Hill and Dickinson, both state ranked, that's pretty impressive in its own right, but they still have a ways to go.
Let's talk about PISD before we move on, because I got into Plano as kind of one of my picks to make playoffs. I'm off PISD. I think in general,
you're throwing in the towel.
Season. From what I've seen through 3 weeks of non-district play, I don't think that PISD makes the postseason. I think, like Kendrick said, I think that 4 spot. Right now, we're making our predictions. This week, spoiler, but I have Allen, Prosper, Jesuit, probably winner of the Crosstown Showdown as number 4, either McKinney or Board, depending on.
Getting there. Lions, I'm with y'all, Coach. McKinney's getting there.
I think
So they're beating Boyd then? Are you getting both?
It's too early to pick.
Kendrick, I drank the McKinney Boyd Kool-Aid for the first 3 weeks, and now you're hopping off the bandwagon after 3 tough weeks.
But anyway,
I don't know who's going to win Crosstown. That's
PISD. I'm not confident that there's a playoff team among the 3. I don't know if you're ready to say that as well, but it sounds like
that has been the at least within 9-6A circles, one of the subplots of the early season, and that is, could this be the first time in its history that all 3 Plano ISD schools missed the playoffs? Yes. Plano East is 0-3 after non-district. Plano West is 0-3. Plano is 2-1. They did get their heads kicked in by Hebron, and then the performance against Eastwood was a little up and down. Now that was a strange game just because of all the external circumstances. They did look, much better against Rowlett in a game that history says that game's going to be pretty close, and then Plano had one of its best offensive showings in a long time. Second time I should say, since 2011 that they scored over 50 points, and then you couple that with them scoring 43 against Eastwood. This is the first time since 2008 that they've scored 40 plus in back-to-back games. They have talent at the skill positions. Don't want to completely write that off. And it's not just the running backs. Nolan Williams, Jaden Chambers have been some pretty impressive big play threats at the receiving game, and Oliver Towns is getting more and more comfortable. He's got 7 total touchdowns over the last 2 games. The big thing with Plano is that they are really young up front, and that's kind of been, as that offensive line goes, the entire offense kind of goes, because if they have time, if Oliver Towns has time in the pocket, then they can make things happen. They're a bit more dynamic in those areas than they have been in years past, so I don't want to completely throw in the towel on them altogether, but as I sit right here now and I outline my 4 teams prior to this who I think are going to get in, and I don't have a Plano ISD team in there.
I mean, it would not shock me, if we're sitting here November 8th or whenever the last game is, and Plano beats somebody and ends up with the 4 seed. It wouldn't shock me, because things like that have happened before. Teams have grown. It wouldn't be, just, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. But, initial impressions, they all look down.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible. I mean, wins are wins. Being 2-1 is being 2-1, but that's about as soft a 2-1 I think as you'll find.
Yeah, we don't we don't know what to make of Rowlett just yet, just because they did have a really, really tough start to the year with Prosper and Rockwall, and with Plano again. It's a team that still looks a little young and they're still trying to work through some things. But I mean, so is Plano in some ways. But nevertheless, so yes, I have Allen and Prosper. I'm all in on Prosper as being the second best team in the district. I think it's a pretty decided margin at that.
Yeah. Prosper and Allen, they don't play till November 1st, second to last game of the year. But if they were to play this Friday and Raylan Sharp was injured, does Prosper win that game? I mean, they struggled against Coppell.
I guarantee if they turn the ball over 4 times, they will.
Because they almost lost to Coppell. And Coppell is not Coppell right now.
Can Prosper swing on the bully? Because nobody swings on the bully.
I mean, they swung on a bully last week.
I'm talking about in this district. Nobody swings on Allen last week.
They swung on a district champion last week and looked pretty great doing it. I mean, that's not dismissed just how impressive that performance against Flower Mound was, because none of us saw that coming, or at least most of us didn't see it coming. Nevertheless, though, Prosper has looked great. Like I mentioned earlier, the emergence of Tyler Bailey, who you mentioned him coming in the year, it's like he could be in a candidate to play quarterback. Depending on where they're at with Jackson Berry. He was their leading rusher in the second week against Timber Creek. He was their leading receiver last week against Flower Mound. This kid can do everything, apparently. He's just a sophomore, too.
Only a sophomore. He had 10 catches, 109 yards. I saw one of his touchdowns on Twitter. One of the someone tweeted out the Twitter highlights, and man, Tyler Bailey, I'm glad they found a way to use him. Because it was between him and Jackson Berry heading into the year who would be the quarterback there. But Jackson Berry, man, he looks like he's taken over that role nicely from Keegan Shoemaker. Man, that offense is rolling.
Yeah. And then you look at their defense, which, let's see, I have it written down. They haven't allowed a running back to rush for more than 50 yards yet this season. That includes Pierce Hudgens, who was one of the best running backs in the area last season. So, yes, Prosper looks awesome so far.
That segue, that run defense will get tested this week against McKinney. As Lamario Ransom, he's a sophomore for McKinney. He's got 506 yards. He's like second or third in 6A in the area. He's putting up about 150 and a touchdown a game. But the thing about McKinney is their offense is undercover explosive, as they've put up 48, and last week I think they put up 43 back-to-back weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Samson Narcos, as you go into the game, you got to keep up with him. Sophomore quarterback, he's legit. Little bitty guy, but he's very accurate.
This will be a nice litmus test for McKinney, because you look at just your non-district competition is all relative. They don't all play the same caliber of competition and whatnot. And their wins were over Irving MacArthur, Richardson Pearson. They almost came back to beat McKinney North, but I think it's fair to say that of those 3, they have not played an upper echelon defense yet.
No, but the thing about McKinney is they get better each week, just like they did last year. So far, I'm seeing the same thing. And last year their ceiling was, I was hope they win a game this year, and they end up going to the playoffs. They have a way higher of a floor to start with this year, and going to this district, and the confidence and the swag, the WAWG that Coach Shavers don't preach. That I'm expecting big things from the Lions, barring injuries.
But you've penciled them in; they're still in the playoffs in your eyes.
I'm not shaking. I'm not like my man over here.
You had them over Prosper initially. I do want to ask that. Like, do you still think they could be the second best team in the district, or is
we'll find out Friday night?
Prosper wins by
3 touchdowns.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
I don't know how you.
I'll be there. Come find me.
I'll be there.
The Brazilian dude in the press box.
So yeah.
You think it's gonna be at 30 points?
Yeah.
It was 36-0 over Flower Mound.
McKinney's not the Miami Dolphins, bro.
They're not Flower Mound either.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, if they prove it Friday, then they prove it great. But going into this game, I don't know how you can.
Is that caveat or not?
I think I'm on the record thinking McKinney I think they will be. That's what I'm saying. I'm on the record saying McKinney's going to lose by 3 or 4 scores, and I don't think it's ever going to be close. But. If more power to them, they go out and put that on the bulletin board and be competitive, whatever. But
I also just like Rylan Kendrick up on the podcast.
hey, they watch what we saying. They're like, I guarantee you, Coach Shavers then will be playing this. I'm
not hiding.
Good.
All right,
have your face.
I'll be the first. Hey, I'm always the first to admit it. The next week
give me one too.
If y'all go out and beat Prosper, hey, I'll admit it next week. I was wrong, but for right now, I think y'all lose by 3 or 4 touchdowns. That's.
One team that we had among our 4, at least 2 of us had them in the playoffs, and that was McKinney Boyd. As far as a potential bounce back candidate, I was at the forefront of the McKinney Boyd bandwagon when we were doing our district preview podcast. They've given me a little bit of. I mean, it was granted, yes, it was a risky take at the time, just because Boyd had yet to really prove much. It just looked nice on paper, and there was a lot of encouraging evidence that they could be much better than they have been in these last few years. There is one thing about Boyd that has kind of worried me a little bit these first 3 weeks. I feel like that offense is a little bit too reliant on the big play.
Yeah, they're very young. Carter Whitfield, he's got 5 touchdowns, but he's got 4 picks. At the end of the day, he's a very talented sophomore, so you got to take the good with the bad in this district, because you can't have too much bad and get away with it. Because it's almost, I would say, to be elite in this district, you got to put up 35 points or more a game.
Yeah.
And I'm so far, I'm not seeing evidence that Boyd can do that week in, week out. They can go up and pop up on you. They can pop up on a Plano or Jesuit and put up 30, 40 points and beat them. But I haven't seen them doing it week to week this year. They're built for the future. They're more team that's trending. Like this time next year, I'll probably be different. But as of today, I don't see them consistently putting up the points you need to get in the playoffs in this district.
It's so tough to say that, because what would we be saying, though, if they had played the 3 teams that were on McKinney's schedule? Like, what if they played the McKinney North defense, followed by Irving MacArthur, followed by Pierce? I mean, it's fair to say that, Boyd's 3 games, Naaman Forest was what it was, but then they played Marcus and Lewisville, 2 teams that I think we have as playoff teams out of 6A, and, teams that are, a bit more indicative of kind of the level of competition they'll see at this district. But you're right, Devin? Hanging in there. With Boyd, though, let's see. They've scored 11 touchdowns total this season, and I did the math. 7 of them have been on a play for more than 50 yards. And within that, they did have a pick 6 and whatnot, so they did have 10 offensive touchdowns. Within those 10 touchdown drives, 8 of them featured a play of at least 45 yards, and the other 2 drives began inside the opponent's 25-yard line. So pretty much every time that they've scored, it's been on a big play, essentially, or set up by a big play. They have not shown the ability to, that they can sustain.
They get a lot of penalties, and it's like they're one of those teams. If you're watching tape on them, you probably like, they're young, they're going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And all those mistakes are young mistakes, but at the end of the day, mistakes will get you beat.
And that just does worry me a little bit, because I just don't know how far you can get with. They have the talent, obviously, to make those big plays happen, but if that is what to this point at least has been their sole means of finding the end zone, is needing one of those plays to come about, it's just tough to do against, when you face smarter, more talented defenses than what they saw in week 1.
So far, but I think I'm almost put money that they're going to pop up on somebody, because on the flip side, like the Flower Mound Marcus, the 3 years I covered them, the Boyd program lays down. They didn't lay down and could have won the game. So little stuff like that tells me there's going to be one Friday. Y'all going to be, no, Boyd ain't going to win. I'm going to be Lone Ranger, and they're going to pop one of y'all teams.
If Boyd's your 5th or 6th best team in the district, they got to beat somebody. Yeah. So I wouldn't even consider it them sneaking up on a Plano, or if they beat Jesuit, then Boyd and Plano. Right now, I'd probably take Boyd. I don't know, man. I mean, those are two non-playoff teams, I guess, as far as we're concerned right now.
He's not a courage of his conviction.
Well, here's the argument. So regarding Plano, so we haven't actually gone out and put out our top 4 because every single person at this roundtable right now, Devin's off, blowing his nose or taking some allergy medicine or something. We all had Plano in the playoffs. Them, Prosper, and Allen were unanimous picks for making the playoffs. So is everybody buying into the, this is the year that PISD collectively misses out, or does anybody still think that
Jesuit don't get them?
Yeah.
I mean, 4 through 7 is just such a...
Yeah.
I think 3 through 7. I think Allen and Prosper are the only sure things, and then West is probably...
nothing surprised me at this point.
Put some perspective in the M. I'm going on record. Barring injury to the quarterback.
The only thing that would surprise me is Plano West knocking off one of these teams. Other than that, McKinney can beat Jesuit. Jesuit can beat Boyd. Boyd can beat, I don't know, East. It's all just...
East could get so much better. We haven't even talked about Plano East. I mean, they're 0-3, but the promise is there. If East can ever get out of its own way, East could beat some people, because I think they found something in Dylan Hayden. That kid's a gamer at quarterback. That kid can run. He gives them 2 weapons out of the backfield in combination with Trey Jones-Scott. That defense is legit. Coach Red Barons at Sachse, even though Sachse got that game last week, he came out and said that, that East defense is for real. That's one of the best defenses we've seen. They just can't get out of their own way. They can't put a half together, much less, 4 quarters. So, maybe they continue to do that and shoot themselves in the foot and finish 6th or 7th. But like you said, to your point, if East figures it out, then that whole mess of East, Plano, Jesuit, McKinney, and Boyd, I mean, it's a log jam in the making. It may come down to...
So let me get this right. Y'all basically saying that there's neither McKinney team's going to make the playoffs.
No, I
think one of them's making it for sure.
But y'all not saying with no courage of y'all conviction, because if they get in,
My 4.
I'm asking you straight up.
I told you.
Does the McKinney team get in the playoffs?
I said earlier that the winner of McKinney and Boyd will have the 4 seed, as far as I'm concerned right now. So I
think at least one of them gets in for sure.
I think Allen, Prosper, Jesuit.
Skeptical of that.
I'm skeptical of the whole thing, but those are my picks.
The whole district outside of Allen and Prosper.
Yeah, outside of Allen and Prosper, it's again,
What are you confident about besides Allen being the best and Prosper being the second best?
We'll see on Friday.
Exactly.
So lost in all this, Kendrick, who are you picking to win that game on Friday?
We'll see.
Come on. Oh, come on. Don't do that. Who are you picking to win, Prosper or McKinney?
I didn't have my picks yet.
Oh, my gosh.
Don't cop out on us, Kendrick. Come on. Who is it?
Coach Shaver,
I know.
This man has no confidence that you guys
Who is it, Kendrick? Come on, man.
Prosper, McKinney. Can I go through all my picks?
Just give us that one pick. Who you think's going to win?
I think you've known says it all.
Yeah.
Shavers, there's your man.
At Kendrick Johnson. All right. So let's, before we move on, let's just get our top 4s out of the way. This is officially where we're going when we make our district predictions later on this week. Mine, Allen, Prosper, Jesuit, and McKinney.
Yeah.
Mine's the same.
Same.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at right now. Would not shock me if Plano figures it out, but Allen, Prosper, Jesuit, McKinney, 4 right now.
Don't feel good about it, but yeah.
I feel because I hate that I'm already jumping off the Boyd bandwagon, because they have played I feel like those two teams, who's to say that those teams don't do the same thing to McKinney that they did to Boyd, Lewisville and Marcus.
They get in their own way. They have talent, but they're young. So it's one of those things, can they put it together consistently?
I mean, that's kind of where the McKinney pick comes from, because they're the only team that I think
they're gonna put it together.
Has a year of showing that they figured something out. Boyd doesn't have that. East doesn't have that. Plano doesn't have that with this group of individuals. So it's almost like just kind of a benefit of the doubt in Coach Shavers and McKinney, and kind of the pedigree from last year, that out of this jumbled mess, you've shown enough that you're kind of the tentative favorite.
He said enough, I think.
So yes, Allen, Prosper, Jesuit, McKinney. Kendrick, where are you leaning? Is that your top 4? Do you have Boyd in there over McKinney? Do you have any of them over there over Jesuit?
I got McKinney in there.
Okay.
Confidently.
Jesuit has 3.
Huh?
Jesuit's your number 3?
Jesuit's 4.
Jesuit's 4.
McKinney's number 2. Okay.
Allen, Prosper, McKinney, Jesuit for Kendrick.
So
McKinney might be Prosper. 2.
If only anybody at this table had any faith in them to win that game. All right, so that is a look at 9-6A and where we are standing heading into district play, which starts Friday. Devin, let's give you a chance to chime in on this, man. Let's talk about one of your districts. Let's talk about 10-6A.
Oh, man.
So you're...
Anybody else?
I mean, you talk about a district that, I mean, what to make sense of what in 3 weeks. I mean, I think there's a clear number one with Sachse and Taylor. You've probably seen Sachse more than I have with anybody else. But I still think even Sachse has questions. I mean, I don't like the quarterback rotation. I understand, talking to Coach Behrens. He said, we're going to go with odd hand. We're going to go with, whoever's feeling it at that. They could be series to series. It could be quarter to quarter. It could be game to game. I don't like the quarterback rotation. I mean, it's worked out okay for them. I mean, they're 2-1. They beat Coppell.
They showed well against Trinity, too, at the Cotton Bowl.
They had a chance to make it, lost by 2, and obviously took care of business last week against Plano East. Parker Wells, Xavier Foreman, they each bring a different skill set. They each bring a different look.
It seems like they've cut Jordan Neighbors from getting any real time at quarterback, which I think was a possibility heading into the year, but I think they've kind of realized and relegated him to being, slot receiver, running back at times. They'll run like a couple plays out of the Wildcat or something, but it's really the Parker Wells and Xavier Foreman show at this point. And you mentioned series, quarter to quarter. I mean, it's like play to play sometimes. I mean, Wells will kind of lead him on a drive, and then Foreman came in. His first 2 passes were touchdowns against East, and he hadn't played at all. And then he came in, from the 15-yard line in the red zone or whatever, and threw a touchdown pass and threw another one kind of in a similar situation, although I think he led more of that drive. But yeah, it's two-headed for sure. I mean, it's weird. It's going to be, I think, up in the air. I don't know if they're going to have a Derrick Rose moment this year.
Yeah, and I thought if they did, it would be Jordan Neighbors. Yeah. Because, again, in that opener against Coppell, when both Wells and Foreman were struggling, they put in Neighbors, and he did, play quarterback for 2 drives, and they marched down the field and scored touchdowns on both. Really haven't used him since. Now, granted, like you say, he's tied for the team lead in receptions. Yeah. They're going to find ways to get the ball in his hands. And I think their defense is solid. I mean, across the board. They kept Trinity in check.
They got a defensive line like they always do. Yeah, and sometimes that's it starts there in high school.
Yeah, and their secondary is young, but they got guys that are figuring it out. It's just what to make of it after Sachse is really confusing. Rowlett, it's hard to say that there's positives that come out of a 55-34 loss. But even if they were playing catch-up, they did get some offense going.
Offense definitely found something there in the second half.
I mean, this is a team that their only score against Prosper was a defensive score, and they were shut out against Rockwall until the fourth quarter, and they were down 50-0.
Yeah.
So any kind of semblance of an offense coming together, I guess Alex Rout threw for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns, rushed for over 100 yards. So it was good to see him.
Oh yeah,
just kind of, just that whole unit, just trying to build some confidence. Their defense.
They just had a tough time handling them up front. And when I mentioned Plano's offensive line showing signs of improvement, that was the big thing that really opened up that offense. I do like with Rowlett though, just those 2 receivers, Antonio Hull and Trayvon King. I think when they try to get those 2 in space, they can really do some impressive things. And Antonio Hull had a 68-yard touchdown where he was a good 5 yards ahead of the defensive back. There was talent there in the skill positions for sure. But it's just kind of how they fare in the trenches was a little bit alarming on Friday.
Yeah. What about the Lakeview Patriots? They gonna sneak in there?
You know what? It depends on which.
Is it 7-0? Is it the defense or the offense? I saw the score.
Yeah, 7-0. The rare scoreless going into overtime game against Berkner last week.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had not heard about that.
Box scores,
but Kamar Wheaton didn't play, and that's
is that the Lakeview stud? I heard him.
He's the number 1 ranked running back in the country for 2021 by 24/7 Sports. I mean, he's
why hasn't he played? Does anyone know?
Banged up apparently. I mean, I don't. He played 1 week. I mean, but. And again, it's sad to say that one player can dictate a prediction or projection in terms, but Kamar Wheaton, I think, is that important, especially in this district where, there's not a dominant team. You don't have an Allen or one of these, a Longview or Rockwall that's just so far head and shoulders above the rest that it doesn't matter who you have. I think a player like him is the difference between them finishing second and contending for the district crown, or them possibly missing the playoffs.
Wow.
As you saw last week with against Berkner, and the week before they lost to a North Mesquite team that's solid, but not world beaters.
Yeah.
And they got beat 33-14.
Wow.
So it's hard. But you can go down every team in this district pretty much and just kind of scratch your head. North Garland's off to a 3-0 start. They were kind of a dark horse coming in, the deepest they've been in years, the most experience they've had in years. But when you look, they beat Frisco, Liberty, Irving, Newman Smith.
Creekview beat
So
Frisco
not exactly a murderer's row. Garland.
A couple winless teams in that.
Yeah, I mean, Garland was, they had a good freshman team last year. They, were bringing those guys up. They're off to a 2-1 start. But again, Irving, Richardson, the one good team they played was Great City, and they got beat.
Yeah.
It's just across the board. South Garland's 1-2, but they beat Molina. And then you got teams in transition. Naaman Forest is 0-3. They've scored 7 points in three games. In 3 games, they had one touchdown total. Rowlett sitting there at 0-3. Wiley's at 0-3. So I mean, it's just what to make of these because it's not.
Sachse's going to win the district, but it's not a vote of like Sachse's great. I mean, I think Sachse's fine.
I mean, I'd say Sachse's fine, and I think Sachse has the potential to be a lot better in Week 10 than they are right now because they do have some young kids and they do have athletes across the board there. Outside of that.
What do we do with this?
So 10-6A, did they win a playoff game? Well, basically, just Sachse win a playoff game.
Sachse's who would they get matched up with in y'all's projections?
Oh, let's see then. So if it's
Prosper,
probably Prosper.
Way too early bowl predictions.
It'll probably be Prosper. Yep. And I do not see that going well for them at this moment.
That would be an incredibly tough matchup. Outside of that, it would be tough to see 10-6A coming out at this point. It's. I know you're going to ask me, so I'll go ahead and give it to you. I think early on I have it written down right.
Okay. Your initial projections had Sachse, Rowlett, Lakeview Centennial, and Wiley as the top 4.
So I got my Patriots up in there.
Has that changed at all as we sit here 3 weeks into the season?
You know what?
And they were gone.
And I'm basing this on Kamar Wheaton being available and playing going forward. Obviously Sachse, I have winning the district. Assuming everybody's healthy, I have Lakeview second.
Okay.
I think they have enough good athletes on both sides of the and obviously a true difference maker. I still have Rowlett at third. I think their offense will come around. I think they'll develop, and they have the pedigree. They haven't missed the playoffs since 2005. And I have North Garland nudging Wiley out of that 4th spot. Even though they haven't played the strongest competition, I do like what Joe Castillo's been doing with that program over the years and slowly getting better. I mean, they went 6-4 last year, and were tied with Wiley late in the game before Wiley scored a Rashad Dixon, their outstanding quarterback, scored in the final minute, and that was the difference in the playoffs. They don't have Rashad Dixon this year. Wiley. They played close. They played Prestonwood close. It took Rockwall Heath to overtime, which at the time no one really thought anything much of. But now it's maybe a different story.
Not the worst result in hindsight.
And then they got thumped pretty good by Jesuit last week. And Wiley is a team that tends to peak later in the season. But right now, I got North Garland as my fourth team out of that district.
Okay, that is a look at District 9-6A and 10-6A. We'll touch on 11-6A and 6-6A in just a moment. But first, actually going to shift to 5A for the Student Athlete Spotlight. Brian, you went out to Frisco as the Raccoons off to a surging start under new head coach Jeff Harbert. And one of the big reasons why is look at this passing game that Frisco's got going on. Quarterback Caree Green, who has got the Raccoons off to a great start. Brian talked with Caree on his season and how Frisco's fared up to this point. We will see what he had to say after a word from this sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
All right, I'm here with Caree Green, quarterback here at Frisco High School. And Caree, y'all are 3-0 to start the year, man. What's been the recipe to the success so far, and what's kind of been gelling for the Raccoons this season?
I mean, all I say is when we come out to practice, I was like, or like before a game, I go out and say, do your job and do it well, which I got from Belichick, the head coach for Patriots. I take that into consideration, saying like, just do your job and like everything will be fine. Do your job and do it well.
So Belichick, are you a Patriots fan?
No. I just like that saying he has. I'm a Seattle fan. You know?
You're a Seattle Seahawks fan?
Yes, sir.
Why is that? So I'm assuming you like Russell Wilson then.
Yeah,
Okay.
He's a big impact.
How much of his game do you try and, you being a quarterback, how much of his game do you try and model yours after?
A lot, everything. I look at everything he does. Like I watch him all the time, and it's like all his checkdowns, like everything that he does, like, and even off the field. So
Now, you haven't always been a quarterback. You've played a lot of positions. You were a quarterback in middle school, and you've kind of bounced around. Tell me a little bit about, some of the other positions you've played and how you got to becoming the starting varsity quarterback here at Frisco.
Well, I played linebacker at first, like my sophomore year on varsity, and receiver. And then one day I asked the coach, I was like, can I try for QB? And he was like, yeah, we'll give you a shot. So I got that shot.
Now, when was that? When did you approach him about the position?
Probably like the 5th game. I was like, we can really use a quarterback that can throw and run the ball and do all that.
Now, it certainly helps having a lot of the weapons you have. I mean, I could list so many names: Blake May, Bryson Clemens, and on and on and on. How much easier is your job, with guys like that on the offense as well?
Well, I know they'll put 100% on the field. Like, I know they'll put everything they got on the field, and I know they got my back, and I got theirs. So they're really tight friends.
What has been, some of the difficulties in making that transition, to being the starting quarterback?
Well, it took a lot of composure and being confident, because at first I was a sophomore and they're all junior, seniors and older than me. So I really had to step up and mature quick.
How did this team embrace you? Stepping into your new role, as a sophomore last year. How did some of the older guys kind of embrace you?
Oh, maybe become a better leader, and be more out and be more like myself, instead of being all shy and not knowing anybody.
Now, this year's team is throwing the ball a lot more than other Frisco teams that have thrown the ball in the past with the wing tee offense and whatnot. Last week, y'all threw the ball, or y'all had more passing yards than rushing yards for the first time in a game since 2013. What has been the main reason for that?
Well, the coaches trusted me that I could make the catch, make the throw, and they know the receiver can catch, and so we just worked a lot on passing and throwing this year. So
now, making state in 7-on-7 last year for the first time in program history, how much of that has been a factor in y'all's team now here in the regular season here in the fall?
Well, that made us tighter and really tight as friends, and knowing where we'll be at. So we've been throwing a lot, so I know where they'll be at, and yeah.
Now, do y'all feel like heading into district play, y'all already started this past week, got a big win over Braswell. Do y'all feel like since y'all started 3-0 and other teams have already picked up some losses this year, Lovejoy, Reedy, Lake Dallas, other teams that were in the mix last year, do y'all feel like y'all are the front runners right now, or how are y'all kind of looking at the grand scheme of things heading into the heat of district play?
Well, coaches just tell me to take it one game at a time, so can't really say anything about that. So I say I know we're gonna win a lot of games, but I just don't really think about it. I take one game at a time.
Thanks again to Caree Green for chatting with Bryan for the Student Athlete Spotlight. We have since dismissed Bryan Murphy and Kendrick Johnson from the roundtable because they don't have to make predictions for either of these last 2 districts.
I don't know if Kendrick would anyway now. Yeah. I follow predictions.
Let's see. We talked 9-6A and 10-6A on the first half of the podcast. Let's get to 6-6A and 11-6A, starting with the former. Taylor, you and I participated in the 6-6A preview podcast. Our predictions way back when, I went with Hebron, Flower Mound, Marcus, and Lewisville as my top 4 in that order. You went with Flower Mound, Hebron, Marcus, and Coppell in that order. I will say straight off, I'm already changing one. I'm not. Those 4 teams, I think, are still the 4 teams that make it. Despite Coppell's impressive showing last week against Allen, you can definitely see some signs of competitiveness out of Coppell, if nothing else. I mean, their 2 losses have been by a combined 10 points, I think. They lost by 3 to Sachse, right? Yeah. And then by 7 to Allen. They did have to scrape and claw to hold off LD Bell, though, and whatnot. So they've been, it's a young team, so you've seen the expected, peaks and valleys of youth and inexperience, but you still do see some promise with Anthony Black, their stud wide receiver, who's definitely fit all that preseason hype that he was garnering, and their defense has shown well too. I mean, even though the Allen wasn't rolling out its full arsenal, still to force 4 turnovers against a program like that, including one against. They picked off their old quarterback Drew Cerniglia twice in that close loss. But at the end of the day, I feel just still a little bit better about how much more fortified those other 4 programs are at the top of the district. I am bumping Lewisville up to 3rd. Yeah. There's 2 things that have happened with Lewisville since we spoke, as far as seeing how they've played out that I'm feeling a bit better about is, and they're on the offensive side of the ball, and this is how the quarterback situation has resolved itself. We mentioned back in the preview podcast that one of the names in the mix for that starting quarterback job was Talon Green, who transferred from Allen in the offseason. Talon Green, who is probably in line to be the quarterback for Allen next year after Raylan Sharp graduates, but he won the starting job at Lewisville, and he is off to a terrific start. And then they've also got a nice boost at wide receiver. A lot of the talk coming in was about Armani Winfield and all the buzz that he had picked up at being recruited by some of the top programs in the country. Is just heading into his sophomore year, and he's been spectacular so far. 16 catches, 205, and 2 touchdowns. They've also got a huge boost though from Isaiah Stevens, who comes in, who's leading the team in all 3 receiving categories: 19 catches, 306 yards, 7 touchdowns, more than 16 yards per catch. So just that added dynamic to their offense, coupled with a very steady running game, between Damian Martinez, Ben McAfee, Talon Green's a threat to move the ball with his legs as well. I'm feeling a bit higher on the Lewisville offense than I did heading into the season, coupled with what they have back on defense. I think I like them to finish 3rd in this district right now.
What were mine? Mine were Flower Mound, Hebron.
Let's start there. Yeah, with Flower Mound and Hebron.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing threw up the sun last week with the Prosper performance?
No, I think that clearly something's up with that matchup. Clearly something's up.
It is so weird how that works out.
It's really strange. And the same thing happened last year.
Yeah.
They got their teeth kicked in by Prosper last year and then went on to win the district. Yeah. I'm not off Flower Mound and how talented that team is because they got beat by Prosper. One, because I think Prosper is legit. I think Prosper's shown more than enough to, just earn in its own right, just being that caliber of team. Yeah. And 2, like I said, it happened last year. This same story played out last year. Flower Mound went on to beat everybody else, and everything was fine. And Hebron, at the same time, I don't want to say that they're like completely, throwing me off with their non-district schedule. That Arlington Martin game was weird as hell. I feel that's a game Hebron should have won. That game was really strange. Throw that one out. But Fossil Ridge, 21-7, not a bad program.
Here's the thing with the Fossil Ridge thing. Okay, so they played them twice last year.
Yeah.
They played them in non-district, lost to them in non-district, then rematched them in the playoffs, beat them. But both times, Hebron only scored 17 points.
Yeah.
So clearly something about that Fossil Ridge defense.
Thing,
for all the talent that Hebron has.
Essentially, nothing's really happened with those 2 teams to make me not they're still the 2 best teams in 6-6A. And I'm, like I said, I'm not ready to, come off Flower Mound as the best team in 6-6A. Maybe it happens, I don't know, but those 2 are clearly, I think, in kind of a tier by themselves. They'll be fine. I think Marcus still a postseason team. And I'm going to put Lewisville in. Lewisville over Coppell. That was the decision. That I made to put Coppell in the first place. Just kind of the pedigree and the streak and all that kind of stuff. But Lewisville has shown me a lot and has shown enough, and I think shown better than Coppell. In the non-district slate that they've had to jump in and be a postseason team. And I'm kind of with you. I think they're probably better than Marcus. I think I might even take Lewisville from 5 all the way up to 3, based on what I've seen. That wouldn't shock me at all. So pretty much the same, I think, for both of us, except that I'm dropping Coppell out and putting the Farmers in there. I think they're for real.
It is curious how Hebron has yet to have that just breakout showing though from the offense with all of the continuity and talent that they did bring back from last season. I still like their overall ceiling a bit more than I do Flower Mound's, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Lost in the all the hubbub about that insane game with Arlington Martin was that head coach Brian Brazel said that first half was maybe the best defensive half that he has ever seen Hebron play under him. They held Martin to negative 30 yards. They just couldn't get things right with special teams.
Game was stupid.
Protecting the ball, and they were down 24-0 at the half as a result. But nothing to do with the defense. And you imagine that with Carson Harris, Isaiah Broadway, Jalen Lott, the talent that they have on offense, that they will come around and find their groove in no time and whatnot. So the performance against Plano was one where they didn't have to break a sweat really. They were granted so many short fields, kept on scoring, and then so the Martin one was what it was, and then as we alluded to, perhaps the Fossil Ridge thing is just more of a traditional tricky matchup for them given how they've played against that team in the past. But I still like them to win the district. Flower Mound really close behind, and then like I said,
I don't think it would shock either of us however those two teams finish. You know, you have Hebron as number 1. I don't think you'd be shocked if Flowermound wins the district. Same thing for me. I wouldn't be shocked if Hebron wins the district.
Yeah. It should be a fun one, though.
Yeah.
There could be,
It's one of those districts that's competitive and good, which is the best kind to cover, because there's a lot of competitive. Like 7-5A Division 2 is going to be competitive this year, but that's not a good district. Those teams aren't very good. You know what I mean? Like, it's fun to cover a district that's competitive and full of parity, but also the teams are good in the broader scope.
The thing within that 8-team district, though, I don't know if I foresee any of the Irving teams posing sneaking up on anybody like they did almost last year. There was MacArthur almost got Coppell last year. Nimitz almost got Marcus. I just saw Nimitz last week. They lost to Creekview. Their non-district results have been a little bit discouraging as far as their ability to show that they might be able to play spoiler at any juncture of the 6-6A schedule. So yes, that's where we are at right now with District 6-6A. Devin, let's close this out and let's chime in on what is shaping up to be a fascinating race over in District 11 6A. So
I mean, you talk about parity and quality teams. I mean, I think you have that at 11 6A. 4 of the 7 teams are undefeated. There's 4 total losses.
That's good.
Four total losses, and half of those are at Highland Park. So there's teams, and again, obviously they played different, varying levels of difficulty. But Mesquite's 3-0 for the first time since 2012. Had a chance to see them. A little shaky in the first half.
That had to be a frustrating
hang
game.
around, but once they put their gas on put on the gas, it was pretty much done. Dylan Hillard McGill, dual threat guy, showed his wheels. He had a 7-yard touchdown run. Ladarius Turner didn't play much in the first half. Their outstanding running back. They used a lot of different guys, which is good going forward, because Ladarius Turner is capable of being one of those 25 carry a night guy, but he's a speedster, and so if they can keep him in a rotation to where he's getting 15 touches as opposed to wearing him down in the fourth quarter. He was lethal in the third quarter on that decisive drive. Jadarian Smith, the fastest player on the team, showed why. That was really the play of the game against Plano West when West had cut it to 24-21 right before halftime. You think they got the momentum, and Jadarian Smith takes a kick up back 97 yards for a touchdown, and it was all Mesquite in the second half. So, Mesquite off to a tremendous start. North Mesquite bounces back after a tough loss in the opener. They've beaten Lakeview and Pascal. They're 2-1. Kamari Thompson's done a good job at quarterback. Torian Smith is a guy, he's a senior, but really wasn't on my radar as far as seeing them play. He has a fumble return for a touchdown, an interception return for a touchdown, but he plays both ways. He's also their leading receiver. 3 touchdown passes last week. I mean, it's just a guy who's just come on strong and made plays. Samuel Inyang leads the team. He's averaging 9 yards a carry. Well, he's also one of their top defensive backs. So North Mesquite's, kind of at a necessity because they're not as deep as some other 6A programs are. But not only are they having to play guys both ways, but they're getting their guys to make plays on both sides of the ball, which is a really good sign early on. Again, Horn had a tough one last week against Cedar Hill.
That's Cedar Hill,
very angry Cedar Hill team after 2 really tough losses against top, state-ranked competition. But Horn, they're skill guys. Horn's going to be fine when it's all said and done. But then, you look kind of across the rest of the district, Rockwall. I mean, they're 2-1.
But still, man.
how would the sophomore quarterback Braden Locke? How would he transition? 3 games, 1,232 yards and 13 touchdowns.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
And you mentioned, obviously, it helps when you have Jackson Smith and Jigba to throw to 24 catches, 558 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And he's probably sitting out the second half of a lot of these games. I know against Rowlett, he took the second half off. Longview, the defending state champions. If you look on Twitter, I follow their football team, and if you would have just read their Twitter feed, thoughts this week, another penalty, there's another turnover. You never know they won 42-0. But so goes when you have that kind of standard. They held off Lufkin in a rivalry game.
Man, I get it.
They held off Lufkin in a rivalry game, 24-21 in the opener, and Marshall, John Tyler, they outscored them 95-0 since. And then a couple teams that not much was talked about before the season started. Rockball Heath, who had his new coach in Mike Spradlin. Well, they've hit the ground running. They're 3-0. They handled Keller Timber Creek in the opener, 38-10. Solid win there. Wiley, they did go to 2 overtimes with them, and then they beat Richland. They have a sophomore quarterback, Josh Hoover, who's completing 75% of his passes for 782 yards and 8 touchdowns. So, I mean, promising start to this season, certainly for Heath. And then Tyler Lee, a team that's kind of been getting its footing, trying to. They're off to a 3-0 start. You know, they play the East Texas competition out there, so it's kind of hard to gauge because we don't see those teams play common opponents. They beat Marshall. They beat John Tyler. Both teams that Longview beat as well, but Longview, again, they outscored those 2 teams 95-0. Whereas Tyler Lee, they were closer games, and then they beat a Nacogdoches team last week. But you know, for pretty much every team in this district, there's a lot of reasons to be coming in with confidence. There's a lot of reasons to believe that they can be one of those 4 playoff teams. They've all built momentum in some form or fashion, and it should be a really fun district.
I was just looking up a Jackson Smith and Jigba stat.
Like, oh no!
their first game of the season against Highland Park, he had 13 catches for 311 yards and 3 touchdowns. I don't want to kick Plano ISD anymore while they're already down, as we already said. I think they're all going to miss the playoffs and whatnot, but I went back to last season and wanted to see what Plano's leading wide receiver had for the entire year. Their leading wide receiver had 20 catches for 301 yards and 2 touchdowns.
So he topped them yardage-wise and touchdown-wise in one game?
In one game. Just to put in perspective just how incredible this kid is. And it's like you said, Devin, like maybe the best pound-for-pound player in the state, and yeah, hey, maybe I'll get to see him in the postseason against Allen again. Yeah. It was a joy to watch that kid do his thing last year. So as far as your preseason picks, as far as where you thought this district was going to shake out, you had Longview first, Rockwall second. First off, do you feel like that's still the order? Has Rockwall shown enough to where maybe they could threaten Longview a bit this time?
I think Rockwall's going to beat Longview.
There you go.
Here's what I think. I think Rockwall beats Longview because they play in the opening week of district.
Okay.
Next week. They don't start for another week in 11-6A. I still think Longview goes further in the playoffs because I think Longview, senior quarterback at Haynes King, they've been there, done that. They're the defending state champions. I just think playing that early in district, Rockwall is just so explosive, and they're firing on all cylinders right now. It's a shootout. I mean, Rockwall, their one loss was to Highland Park, 66-59. I think that bites them sometime in the playoffs when they get into a shootout where they can't slow anybody down. I think Longview can do that in the playoffs. But as far as the district, I think Rockwall, it was 42-35 last year. Yeah. And Longview scored in the fourth quarter, and that was the difference. The way Rockwall's offense is rolling at this point, I think they get Longview in that opener before Longview starts kind of rounding into form, playoff form late in the season. So I do think Longview makes the longer playoff run, but I think Rockwall wins that game and wins the district championship.
And then you had your last two were actually, you basically took the Horn versus Mesquite matchup and said the winner of that game is getting the 3rd seed and the loser is getting the 4 seed. So if I have to actually, I know we're putting a little bit of the cart before the horse, so to speak, but who do you foresee winning that game, and who would be your 3rd seed right now between those two or somebody else? Maybe Lee, maybe Heath, whoever?
Well, unlike one of our colleagues, I'll go ahead and answer the question. At this point in time, I think Mesquite beats Horn. I think Horn has a little bit of an edge in the skill position, but Mesquite has enough playmakers also. Last year Mesquite kicked a field goal as time expired to win 20-17. And I think this year's game will be a little bit more high scoring. And again, they play the district opener as well, so it's right around the corner for these two teams. We talked about Lee and Heath and even North Mesquite getting off to good starts. It's a different level of competition that they face. I think they're certainly going to be more competitive, and I think they're certainly going to factor in. And neither one, especially Mesquite or Horn, they can't afford to have a slip up against one of those teams because that could be huge. I mean, tiebreakers are always an issue in this district, it seems like, and it's always we're calculating point differential here and whatnot. But at this point in time, I do think Mesquite is just a touch better defensively than Horn, and so I give them the slight edge to finish 3rd with Horn taking 4th. Again, I think Tyler Lee, Rockwall, Heath, North Mesquite, there's plenty of reasons for optimism, but I need to see them prove it once district plays get started.
And there you have it. Those are our official playoff predictions for our 4-6A districts. God, I hate doing this. It's so tough, man.
We'll see y'all in November.
So yeah, we will see how it all shakes out in the weeks to come. Should be fun though, if nothing else. I feel like we've set ourselves up to where it's going to be very fascinating to see how these races unfold with as closely knit as some of these races at least appear to be on paper. Now we'll see what happens, but yes, that is currently where we stand weekend. 3 weeks into the season, heading into district play, and that'll do it for this episode of the podcast. We'll be back on Thursday with our usual preview podcast centered on our game of the week. You can go to the website at starlocalmedia.com to vote for one of the 5 candidates, and yeah, we'll preview that game plus some other big ones in our area on Thursday. Otherwise, folks, this has been Matt Welch. Appreciate Taylor, Devin, Brian, Kendrick, the whole band for tagging along on this one. Long episode and whatnot. But yes, folks, you enjoy your week, and we will talk to y'all later.